any 21st century person, is going to ask you, well, we already have, so much information out there. It's the 21st century. Do we need to go back into the past? Do we need to bring these thousands of years of history and, all the other things, which to them may seem irrelevant? Do we need this right now? So, what would your answer be to these naysayers?
So I think the question has two levels, right? One is the overarching need for looking back at your own civilizational identity. What is the need for that? And secondly, why do we need another organization if there are people who are already working on it? What is it that we add? I think the quest for identity is a very primal one, whether you recognize this or not. Like I said, in my own experience, and for me, the pramana is not just what we read, but what is the truth of your experience. It is not so much about how much you've read or what you've read and what you haven't, but you can take an extraordinary amount of insight from whatever you read if you're able to blend that with the truth of your own experience. And I do this not because I have some great insight, having read a lot, or I'm definitely not guilty of that. But your life was okay, right? You found your love, you found your job, you have I have a wonderful daughter, and everything was great, right? You're also in a creative industry, in my own experience. But in all of us, I had experienced it back then, and ever since I've moved into this full time, I've met countless people, Pujita. So many people who've they told me the exact same thing, that there is that ache, there is that void, right? And we are experiencing it because we know that our story is not complete. So this is not a grand question about whether we need to do it for civilization. I'm saying at a very personal, human, individual level, this need to know where you belong is a primordial one. You cannot escape it, even if you try to reason yourself out of it. Your mind has limitations. Your cultural DNA, your racial DNA, your natural evolution, all of those are far more powerful influences. So, this quest for identity, I think this question itself is a naive question coming from people who haven't examined their own lives, because you're trying to intellectualize and analyze something out there. If you make yourself as the instrument, and if you make your own experience as the conduit, you will understand that if it's not some other civilizational identity, you are giving yourself a new identity, but you're still doing that. Bharat Gupji, because Pankaj mentioned his name, he writes about it beautifully. It is a ritual universe. The whole universe is kept in its place because there are certain rituals. That's what we call Rita, whatever metaphysics we have. When you take that away, you still have to replace that with secular rituals like your flag, like your freedom day. Do we question that? We do not question that because we understand that the bond is forged through the embers of those rituals, through those symbols. It is just that we are exchanging one identity for another. The question is, what is the ephemeral and what is the eternal? When we talk about the civilizational identity, we are talking about harking back to the eternal identity, especially in the Hindu metaphysics, especially in the Sanatan Dharma culture. You get to hold on to something that is truly intransient for the first time, perhaps in your life, when you hold that thread of Dharma. And when you hold that thread of Dharma, it is a very natural expression. You are not intellectualizing that anymore. Your entire path becomes very clear. Right? So, the way where I locate the need for this is not just at some meta level. There are, of course, civilizational battles. There are nation-state battles, and we can look at that. That's why we also look at public policy, because the state is ultimately the instrument for the collective expression, and we need to be very, very clear about it. But the story is not about the state. It is not out there. The story is really about the individual, about the fundamental impulse that we have. So my answer is that. So once that is there, then it's a question of whether you have something original to contribute. If you're looking at a new organization, why Brihat, right? Clearly in both Pankaj's story and my story, like we discussed, we didn't have anything in common. If we were to present an idea to Silicon Valley investor today, particularly the whole Y Combinator, culture that they have, they talk about how many miracles do you need to succeed, and no investor invests money if you need more than one miracle. This is a Silicon Valley rule. If you need two miracles, then your pitch is off. So you can only talk about one miracle. Right? So that is that in a product development world, we are arrogant, we are smug about such pithy phrases, right? When you look at life, when you look at actually what's happening in your own experience, how many miracles did it need for us to even meet? How many miracles does it need for us to come together? How many miracles does it need for me to tell this story to you, in a fashion that I can say I represent something meaningful? So that is, and when you understand that, that is the true dharmic way of thinking. That is the consonance between your manasa, vacha, karmana. Is that established? Are you representing it? When your answer to that question is true, then your organization is true. Then your purpose is true. So I would say the basis for this again, the I don't look for validation. I look for support. I look for collaboration. I look for compounding. But the validation comes from my own antakarna, and that is the only way I can think about organizations. There can be a strategic landscape. I speak that language of strategy all the time, but that is just a ancillary. That is something that is required to make sure that what you are attempting becomes successful. But the truth of that comes from within you. So my organization, Pankaj's organization, all of us at Brihat, we are here because we are clear in our own antakarana, and we have, I think, the trikarana should be required to do something positive in this. That is the validation.
Would you
Eh,
like to add something,
yeah,
Pankaj?
if I'd like to add just a few lines to it. So we talk about dharma, we talk about tradition at Brihat. And tradition, if in one phrase, if you want to define it, tradition is that, parampara is that which continues. The very essence of a tradition is that which continues. And Hindu Dharma is called as Sanatan Dharma. So the literal translation would be just like the book of Sri Vamdev Shastri was, the subtitle, the eternal tradition. So Sanatan Dharma is not old. Sanatan Dharma is not new. Sanatan Dharma is that which always is. So about IKS, Dr. Kapil Kapurji quotes another scholar and says that IKS is like Sanatan Ganga Prava. Now, what is a river in flow? What is a great river like Ganga in flow? It's always the same and yet never the same. Like that famous metaphor of Greek metaphor, if you put your foot, you can never put your foot inside a river twice, because the next time you do it, it's an entirely different array of molecules of water. So every time it is, every second it is changing and yet always the same. That is what Sanatan Dharma is, that is what tradition is. And that is the only thing which is alive. If you cut down a river into a pool like we do when we make a dam on a river, when it becomes a lake, its life as such dies because it stagnates. So if the flow, if the change stops, then it stagnates. It becomes something like ossified rules, a group of rules, a community of rules, like many communities in the Middle East. And if it is always changing, with continuing nothing from the past, then it is like nihilism, where you're the only thing, the very statement of Dada, one movement in art, Dadaism, is the only art is to keep destroying art, because they saw the problem as anything which comes from the past is evil. So all you have to do is to keep destroying the old, because whatever they tried creating new, somebody found something old in it. Because how can there something be entirely new? It has to, by its very character as being alive, it has to have something from the past. And so they said their statement is the only art is to keep destroying the art, there is nothing else. So either you become nihilist or you become stuck in ossified rules. But Sanatan Dharma, like always, is that great thermostat, the universal thermostat, the great balancer, which is some not in between, which always creates balance. Sanatan Dharma is always about harmony, about balance. That to continue the universal elements which are always there, and yet to always keep adapting to the local place and time. So all our shastras, all our scriptures are also like that. They always instruct to pay attention to the local, to the regional, but there is always some universal principles, universal siddhanta, which never change. Because, and this is what I wanted to say, anything which is not continuous cannot be alive. We are alive, we exist because we are continuous. There is a continuity in our existence. Because if you go deeper into meditation and into spiritually into finding your own true identity, you are once again and again told to pay attention to things which do not have continuity. And The moment you arrive at that which never breaks down, that which is always continuous, that's the only thing alive. So if you're saying you want to carry nothing from the past, that means that thing is not alive, which carries nothing from the past, as I also displayed. Because if you adopt that principle like Dada, then your only goal is to keep destroying, you are creating nothing. So by the very uh, dint of existing, by the very virtue of existing, you have to continue the universal that's in the past and to keep adapting, adding, subtracting as the time and place demands. So both of these things are to be at the same time. As an institution working in the service of IKS, this is also our mantra, so to say. Thank you.
That is what you both said. In fact, what you said about the river, right? Comparing the river, and that's why we worship the river. The idea of the river, everything in our philosophy, our thought, the river, the sagara, everything makes, it's always a repetitive symbol, right? And I think I remember Rajiv ji, I think, who said that riverine civilizations, they're different. You look at the Indic civilization, you look at Egypt, as opposed to the desert civilizations. They're static. They're not stuck in the past. So yes, it is important to be able to push that. The idea has to go forward. I mean, it's just. And what you said about Dadaism, and I think if you look at the societies that come from, or the society that those ideas came from, like communism, for example, is again very destructive in nature.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.